Hey everybody, it's me, Remy, the comic book poser, and I'm here to welcome you to Enter the Poserverse. As you can see, I've got a new background. I'm no longer in my master bedroom closet. I've reclaimed the downstairs guest room. Hopefully the photo quality is a little bit better and you can see sharper, uglier me, because I've got a new webcam, and hopefully things are less glitchy because I'm closer to my internet. So without further ado, I read a lot of books last week. I picked up 20 new issues. A lot of them were new to me. A couple of them were wrapping up series, and that's not including any of the books that I picked up, the books that I missed out on, right? I picked up A Man Among Ye #1 and Adventure Man #1, but I didn't read those because I had, 20 plus new issues to read this week. And as I've tried to limit myself to, top 5, top 6, top 7, today we're going to go with the top 10 books from last week, because that cut my stack cleanly in half.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
So coming in at number 10 is a book I never thought I would ever talk about, and I blame my fellow Kansan, Burke Family 54. I read Power Rangers The Ranger Slayer #1. Why, you ask? Part of it was I picked up the free comic book day book. My oldest is going through a bit of a Power Rangers phase, so he was like, ooh, Power Rangers. And, we flipped through it together, and I was like, I don't really understand what's happening, but it's kind of interesting. And the second reason I picked it up, you guessed it, good shiny cover. I'm a sucker for a foil variant. When I walked by and was like, ooh, pink shiny, I liked it. So Power Rangers Ranger Slayer #1 is a Boom Studios book by Ryan Parrott, Dan Mora, and Raul Angulo. To be honest, I was a little confused at the beginning, right? I don't understand all of the business that was happening in between, like the Green Ranger and the two universes that's set up here. But what's clear is the Pink Ranger, both sides think that she is working for them in terms of what Lord Drax, Lord whatever, the bad Green Ranger. And then the coinless Power Rangers think that she's been converted at the end of the free comic book day book and is going to work on their side. So you get a lot of cool kind of big Power Rangers combat. And, for making fun of Burke for reading these books, I will tell you that the art is really, really stunning. And part of that is because I love everything Dan Mora does. And I don't know if this is indicative of all of the Power Rangers books that, Ryan Parrott has done. I know he's written a bunch of them. I don't know if Moore has done the art for all of them or not. But this book is kind of good because you start to see, the coinless Rangers kind of attack. And then there's a big reveal as someone may not be dead. And then we get a massive monster on monster growth fight. So it was good. I think this might make me willing to want to pick up another Power Rangers book. Dare I say it? Burke, you might be right, bud. I'm sorry for judging you for reading Power Rangers. Coming in at number 9 is Kanto. This is a one-shot. It's Kanto and the Clockwork Fairies. It's an IDW book, and it's written by David Boer, Drew Zucker, Vittorio Estone, and Duran Bennett. I didn't read Kanto before. Like I mentioned in the pull list video, this is something that was recommended to a bunch of folks by Kevin over at 1-2 Comic Talk, and I saw it, picked it up, gave it a read, and it's actually kind of a good story in terms of this little guy, I'm assuming he's Kanto, kind of hunting down his friends that may have been kidnapped in the initial series. But it's a nice fantasy tale in terms of a clash against good and evil, or, some mythical beings against a witch. And in terms of the way it sets up, what I'm guessing is the next arc of the story is kind of cool in terms of looking at how all of these mythical creatures come together to take down the evil that is plaguing them. Coming in at number 8 is Bliss #1 from Image Comics. It's written by Sean Lewis and Caitlin Yarsky. I like this because it's very intriguing in terms of the setup. So on the second page, you get this nice kind of 2-page spread of someone very clearly is on trial and somebody is trying to defend them. And you find out that someone is defending their father, who may be a mass murderer. So you get these little nuggets of information at the beginning, and then it rewinds very clearly back in the direction of how his father gets put in a position to be potential mass murderer. We don't know if he's guilty. We don't know if he's innocent. But what we do know is that the lawyer who's defending his father in the beginning is very sick as a child. And, you know, I, as a father, am willing to do damn near anything to protect or help my children. And that's kind of what this tale is about, is the steps a father is willing to take to make sure he's got a happy, healthy family. And the other thing that's kind of introduced into this is a drug called bliss, where the would you do anything for your family question becomes flipped in a slightly different way, because, you know, I said I would do, you know, almost anything, but if I forgot my actions, if I weren't aware that the actions I took created, you know, consequences or suffering, would I do those things? So I think it is an intriguing premise of a story, and I think if the next two, you know, book or two deliver, then Bliss will be one of the regular Image titles that I'm fairly excited about, because I think it plants a lot of good seeds. So we'll see how well it does making them grow in the next couple of books. Coming in at number 7 is X-Men Fantastic Four number 4 of 4. This is a Marvel book. It's written by Chip Zdarsky. The art is by Terry Dodson, Rachel Dodson, and Ranson Getty, with some additional colors by Laura Martin. This is the final book in X-Men Fantastic Four run that Zdarsky has put together. We were left at the end of issue 3 in terms of the Fantastic Four and the mutants fighting against each other while Doctor Doom is performing some kind of procedure on Franklin to help restore his powers, in terms of making him, you know, I think the strongest Omega level mutant that exists. And eventually, you know, Doctor Doom's going to Doctor Doom. And of course, he's not doing things with good intentions. He's doing it to cover his backside and make sure he's advantageous. And in a roundabout way, the X-Men and the Fantastic Four kind of come into an understanding. What is insane about how this story ends is the last 2 pages in terms of looking at the long-term relationship between the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. You know, did they really create some kind of an understanding between the two groups? Was it only a temporary alliance to take down Doctor Doom? And I know this is only a 4-issue run, but I'm excited to see if this has any kind of, you know, ripple waves into the like Sword storyline that the X-Men universe is gearing up for. I'm not a big Fantastic Four reader, but if this creates some kind of ripple effect into that direction, then there's a very good chance that I end up picking up Fantastic Four and starting to read it. I know that Zdarsky just kind of picked this up and did this short run, but I think he did both properties justice and kind of sets up both teams for some kind of continual love-hate tumultuous relationship, but with massive effects on a larger scale than we've seen ever before. Coming in at number 6, from Aftershock, The Man Who Effed Up Time number 4. This is written by John Layman and art is by Carl Mostert. And again, this story is a good just bit of craziness time after time after time. Here you see, you know, good Sean and evil Sean have teleported back in time to the primordial ooze where future Sean is trying to kill present Sean that we meet in issue 1. And I like that he's like, oh, I'll show you butterfly effect, and starts kicking the crap out of any kind of life form that he can find. And then what I like, the 2-page spread that it constantly comes back to, is every time Sean does something, we see what happens in the world of like President Abraham Lincoln the Fourth, or the dictator or whatnot. So as he goes through and kicks all of the shit in the primordial ooze, he ends up creating this like insect-based society where you still see the insect in a top hat. At some point, Sean has an ultimate moment of clarity, and he thinks he's figured out who is really out to get him because the clock is running out. This is a wild ride. I've loved it every single time I've picked it up. Coming in at number 5, from Marvel, Daredevil number 21. Another Chip Zdarsky title that I'm a big fan of. The art from Marco Cicchetto and the colors from Mattia Iacono are just great. This sets up in the after effect of the large, massive battle in Hell's Kitchen at the end of issue 20, and Daredevil makes good on his ultimate promise of turning himself into the police. But what really starts to play out is kind of the interesting ethical question of, is it Daredevil who's being questioned and, put on trial, or is it Matt Murdock, meaning we finally unmask who Daredevil is? And it becomes kind of this interesting philosophical discussion. And at times, Murdock has to reveal his identity to a couple of folks who didn't really know it, and it has some massive ripple effects. So I'm excited to see how this sets up the next wave of the arc. Coming in at number 4 is Die number 12 from Image Comics. So it's Kieran Gillen, Clayton Cowles, and Stephanie Hans. This has just been a fun read for me, as I'm someone who's not reading and not playing tabletop RPGs. I still like the fantasy world and the idea of people attempting to sneak out. You're seeing like the two parties are on the verge of potentially meeting one another in attempt to, leave or be forced to stay. In Angria, we're getting little bits of extra history from some of the non-player characters. We're starting to get some insight in terms of like what the rules mean and whether or not the new game master can trap these people. And it's slowly starting to set us up for that next kind of confrontation. So I think it's, this is a good series that I'm excited that I got turned on to during quarantine. I know I'm going to try and go back and collect the first 2 arcs in single issues since I have it in just trades, but I really like this, and I may be on the hunt for a slab to Die number 1. Coming in at number 3 from Scout Comics is Yasmin number 1, and it's written by Saif Ahmed and Fabiana Mascolo. I mentioned in the pull list video that I had already read this, that it was part of the Scout Comics box, and it was going to be really hard to knock this out of my top 5. And there were 2 books that knocked it down a little bit, but this is really a solid pick, that if you like a more realistic book that is kind of grounded in a secondary perspective of current events, then this is a book you want to read. It focuses on the story of Yasmin, who is fleeing ISIS. That it starts that she's, on foot, and she's south of Mosul in Iraq. And in 2 pages that she makes it to Iowa, but you don't know how many folks she started with, what her whole journey is, why she is becoming a refugee. But again, if you look at that kind of thought bubble escaping her head on the front cover, you know that she's dealing with the ghosts and the haunts of her prior home that make it difficult for her to either assimilate to living in America or find a sense of home in her new home. Again, these are the kinds of stories that need to be told, and it's something that's really enjoyed. So if you want a break from all of these different fantasy worlds and superheroes and anything else that, came out this week, Yasmin is a good perspective story grounded in what is happening to, people who are, refugees who are fleeing the Middle East, or I guess any refugee who is fleeing some kind of tyrannical situation, or an immigrant who is fleeing some kind of bad situation. This starts to be a kind of good perspective piece of getting you to see the world through somebody else's eyes or walk in their shoes. Coming in at number 2 this week is another Scout Comics book, Vlad Dracula. Maybe I'm a little biased towards these kinds of stories because I do kind of like Vlad the Impaler. I like looking at the way that he is treated historically, both inside and outside of fiction. This is by Matteo Strickel and Andrea Moody. But this is not really, the Vlad Dracula becomes Dracula. There are a couple of references in there like, I hear people call you Dracula. But it's really about how he starts to set up for war against the Ottomans. This is a panel of him cutting off somebody who's sent to him to ask for children to serve in the army. and for like a fee to show fidelity to the Emperor. And then here's like a nice little pre-battle scene that we start to see. Yes, this is a $7 book, but it's got some heft to it. It's a really, really good read and kind of interesting perspective in terms of looking at one man choosing to take on the Ottoman Empire. And it's different, right? In the preview video, I mentioned how much I like Cullen Bunn's The Brothers Dracul from Aftershock, which does the same kind of treatment, but it's more in the direction of how does he serve the Ottomans as a child and become Vlad the Impaler. With this one, I think is going to set us up for kind of a good epic battle between him establishing his sovereignty as a ruler versus fighting the Ottomans. And then there was one, my hands down top book of the week from Aftershock is Bad Reception number 5 of 5, written, drawn, colored, penciled, lettered, everything by Juan Doe. I have not come across a lot of people who are reading Bad Reception. As I've said a million times on Twitter, in other videos on the blog, this is an exceptional slasher horror book. Book 5 is the definitive end of the story, as the surviving members of the wedding party or the reception party are fleeing hashtag, that you've got everybody kind of headed towards the communication tower so they can get back on the grid to communicate with someone to come save them from the hashtag murderer. And based on who's left alive, that the potential pecking orders. Hashtag is murdering people from least to most followers on social media, so we know the killer's methodology and we know who is probably going to be the ultimate victim. And then we figure out the identity of hashtag and why hashtag was doing what they decided to do. And did I predict the end? Maybe a little bit, but I think there are a lot of good elements of misdirection throughout the entirety of the series that really kind of keeps you guessing, right? That what Juan Doe does in this book is kind of the good standard of like Agatha Christie kind of murder mystery of who done it, and see if you can figure out some of the clues, but with some of these big gritty horror elements. And we get to see hashtag a couple of times throughout the series, and he or she only looks larger, more menacing. I love the way that Juan Doe draws people. I love kind of the direction that he took in this story, and kind of the ultimate message that is delivered at the end by the folks who survive. I have sung Juan Doe's praises of everything of his that I have seen. I got to preview Black Birch that he did with Eduardo Centrone. I talk about my love of his art on Dark Art.
Hey everybody. As you can see from this lovely pixelated shot of me in Half Dark and some pillows, I'm laying in bed. I forgot to add something to the video that I was supposed to do. I have for you a small key phrase that if you made it this long into the video, at some point this week you will need this phrase and it will enter you into a drawing. But my phrase is Booster Gold.
I've liked everything that he's done. I really love a creator-driven series where you've got one person who says, I'm going to do an entire book by myself, and it's a daunting task. And I think, this was a very, very, very excellent kind of masterclass in just showing how talented Juan Doe is. And I don't know what the next chapter is for him or what other projects that he has. I really hope he has another, solo book in mind, or just, more and more art, because I like seeing everything that he does. That the way he abuses, the concept of a line, that not everyone is always drawn kind of clear and perfect and normal, that they've got some grit. the use of color in this book is kind of exceptional to build that horror film vibe, that it's so easy to be immersed in the book that it feels like you're watching a film at times and not just, you know, flipping through 28 pages of colored art. That it was just a kind of good, phenomenal ride. Let me know what you all think down in the comments. Is there a book that, you know, I didn't have in the list that, you know, that I read that you really, really liked? Is there something that we read differently and you want to argue about in the comments? You can do those things. If you like the video, cool, give me that thumbs up, hit that subscription. I'm crawling towards my 250 subscribers, and when I get there, we will have a contest to give away something that I will show off because it has not yet arrived in the mail. So, as always, thanks for stopping by, and have a good one.